Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Attention, if you are a frustrated man who feels like he is not getting the results he wants in his life, health, wealth, relationships, and personal growth, then I've got a powerful free video training for you to help you become a strong, grounded man so you can unlock unlimited power in your life, business, and relationships. Go to kfmconfidence.com to get instant access to this training. Again, that's kfmconfidence.com. If you want a Cliff Notes version of the best material that I've learned after 300 interviews on this podcast about being a stronger, more powerful man, then it's all here at kfmconfidence.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Paul Colaianni. He's the author of The Overwhelmed Brain, Personal Growth for Critical Thinkers, and a fellow podcaster as well. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
I can always tell another podcaster is on the show when your mic sounds really good. I mean, that's just instant. Right off the bat, I know this guy knows what he's doing.
It's instant rapport, too. It's like, oh, you have a good sounding mic, too. What are you using?
Yeah, we're just talking about audio equipment, nerd out for a while, but let's dive in here. The audience is getting bored, I can tell. So let's get in with the content. I start off every show with a favorite quote or some sort of saying that you've lived by. So what do you got for us, and what does that mean to you?
Well, that changes every year, different quote. It's kind of like a bigger vision. But the one they came up with, the one I'm working on this year is, the road of life is paved with flat squirrels who couldn't make a decision. I just love that quote.
You got to break it down. Yeah, you got to break that down.
Well, what I teach a lot is that when you're not making decisions in your life, you're in stagnation. And a lot of people are afraid to make those decisions, afraid to take a step because of their fear of the consequences. So they create all this anxiety going, well, if I choose this route, it's going to do this. And if I choose that, it's going to do that. And so I love the quote because it means that if you're a squirrel in the middle of the road and you're deciding which way to go, you're eventually going to get flat. And it's no fun to be in that place of stagnation and indecision.
Yeah. What could be some common examples of that, where someone is in stagnation? I think maybe a job or a relationship, trying to see how this can apply to someone listening right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think what happens is that we get stuck in an emotional decision typically. Like I'll be in a relationship where I want the other person to change so that my life is better, so this relationship is better. So, I've had this happen in my life. I want her to change when I was married, if you want a practical example. I want her to stop this eating disorder that she has. And I want her to eat what I want her to eat. I want her to be healthy. And instead of looking at this as a decision that I need to make, I was putting all my efforts on her. When in reality, it's a decision that I really need to make for myself. Do I want this in my life? Because I'm trying to change someone else. If I'm focused on someone else, then I'm not changing myself. So what it really comes down to for me is that I need to make decisions for me so that I can create the life I want, or at least do the best I can at it, instead of waiting for other people around me to change their life. So I think it's very important to have this in mind, at least, like I said, for me, going forward. If there's something I don't like you said, a job, a relationship, and there doesn't seem to be any changes happening, even when I talk about it, talk to my boss, talk to my wife, then I need to make a decision for me instead of staying in that stagnation.
And that stagnation is created by what? This makes sense, what you're saying. It makes perfect sense. But why is it that so many of us get stuck in that stagnation?
I just think we think ahead instead of thinking in the moment. So we're thinking of, if I make this decision, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to me? So we're stuck in the fear of the consequences. So I look ahead, for example, with my job. I had a job once where I had these two bosses. They were both the co-owners of the company. And in the moment, they were having a conference and I was part of it, or a meeting. And in the moment, I wanted to say something, but this fear of the consequences of me saying something rose up in my head. So I'm like, well, if I say it, I could get fired. They could discipline me. They could, whatever. And so instead of focusing on that fear, I decided to try it and see what happens. And what I did was I spoke up and I said, hey, you can't really say anything about that guy that you're talking about because you're never here to witness his performance, which is what I thought a risky thing to say to your bosses. They looked at me and they paused and I was like, oh, here it comes. And they said, wow. And I'm waiting for it. And they're like, wow, you're right. We never hear people say that to us. Our employees say that to us. That's what we need to hear. And so I spent many, many years stuck in this fear of making decisions because of these stories that I was making up in my head and not taking action. As soon as I decided to take action, right or wrong, make the decision right or wrong, because I could have been wrong. I could have been fired, but I found out fast what happens. So I didn't get stuck in that future fear of what may or may not happen. I just decided to find out over and over again throughout my life, ever since that moment pretty much, what would happen if I did this, and just took chances. Sometimes it's a leap of faith, but at least I wasn't stuck in stagnation, indecision, and maybe holding on to a lot of negative energy, some anger or something else that would carry with me, and then I would take it out on my wife when I got home or something.
It's funny because we tend to make the worst case scenario in our minds. When we're in that stagnation, we think, oh, I could do option A or option B, but we think of the worst case scenario that likely is not going to happen. But that's what we start leaning towards, and we base our decision making off of worst case scenario possibilities. On
top of that, if I may add, what typically happens is, and I've tested this over and over again, since that day that I stood up to my bosses and said, I'm just going to say what's on my mind. I'm going to honor myself and express what's really happening inside my mind and see what happens. I just took a chance. Ever since that day, I've tested that over and over again. I'm afraid to say what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. And I focus on what I need to do to honor myself, stay in integrity in myself, and say it. And no kidding, 100% of the time, what I thought was going to happen didn't.
So I'm thinking we create a challenge here for the audience. Something like, I'm sure everyone has some sort of indecision that they're in. And I believe is it the Buddha? I know it's some Eastern philosophy where it's, if you are living in indecision, he says that you are suffering. If you are living in this sort of in the middle, like you haven't yet committed, but you haven't said no, it's a form of suffering.
Totally. No doubt. I agree with that no matter who said it.
Yeah, East or West philosophy, it doesn't matter. Still good today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
I'm on board with that. No, go ahead. I'm on board with that.
Yeah. So if we're suffering, here's the thing. So if you don't make a decision, you're going to suffer, but you will stay in that suffering for a longer period of time. But let's say you choose option A and it does turn out to not be the best case scenario for you. At least you're suffering in a positive light. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying either way, you're going to suffer.
Well,
but one goes away. One actually leads to some sort of result.
Absolutely. Well, I look at it this way. What I see is that when you decide to do something or say something, it's forward momentum no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And it's totally up. Forward momentum is totally opposite of stagnation and suffering. And if I were to define suffering in the sense of making every day maybe important, maybe major decisions, it's the emotions that you maybe don't want to feel or face. Because if I say this and she doesn't like it, let's just say you're talking about a relationship, my partner doesn't like it, they may leave me, they may yell at me, they may make me feel bad, I may expose my insecurities, my vulnerabilities. And so by saying what I'm about to say or honoring myself in this way, if that happens, then I will feel a certain way that I won't like. So I won't say anything, even though I want to say it. So now I'm holding on to this other negative emotion of something I want to say, maybe because I'm angry maybe he or she set me off, or whoever is in my life, and I want to say something, but I don't. So I decide not to. Now I hold on to it. That's the suffering. But if I do say something, and I think you were going along this path, and they do exactly what I feared, at least it's on the table that you can work with it. It's like, honey or boss, I want to tell you something, and I'm afraid to tell you this, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's been bugging me, and I need to say it. And boom, I say it. And now it's on the table to work with. They may yell, they may scream, they may kick me out, or they may go, well, I've been wanting to tell you something too, but at least you get it off your chest, and now you can talk about it. It's data you can work with.
Yeah. I think this would be a big challenge for someone who suffers from, quote unquote, the whole nice guy type of syndrome, where you don't want to say, you don't want to speak up for yourself. You'd rather just suffer or let the other person do what they do because you're afraid of confrontation.
Totally. Like the people pleaser.
Yeah.
I lived that life for over 30 years. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And so what has it been like for you to start pushing against that and to start expressing yourself? What has that done to your nice guy? And what were those kind of feelings like as you started coming out of that?
Yeah, well, I think what happens is if you're one of those nice guys or a rescuer or a people pleaser, like I was for many, many years, you're the first guy that somebody says, oh, I'm thirsty. And you get up and go, oh, what can I get you? What can I get you? How are you doing? And that's nice, but a lot of people push it to excess, and they think they're giving and being friendly and kind. But what it is that they're doing it in an emotional deficit to themselves. So it's like they're being overly giving, but under giving to themselves. Mm-hmm, right. It's like they're saying yes to so many people that they're saying no to themselves.
Yeah.
And it's damaging to you. It burns out relationships. It burns out your job, and whatever situation you're in where you're being overly giving and not giving enough to yourself, you're going to burn out, and you're going to walk away feeling resentment because nobody understands me. And why can't they just know that I'm saying yes to be nice? And we try to put all these mind reads on people, and you got to read my mind. So I was in this state for many, many years, and I didn't know it. I just thought you're supposed to be nice to people, and I don't want to cause confrontation, and that keeps the peace with everyone. Well, being in that place, I got walked on a lot. People would take advantage of me a lot. Oh, let's call Paul. He'll do the job. No problem. And that happened over and over and over again. And I lost friendships and I lost relationships. I decided I need to do something different. And it took huge leaps of faith, because that means facing a fear that I've never faced before. The fear of what's going to happen if I do stand up for myself. And to make that leap is a leap of faith, because you don't know what's going to happen. It's never happened before if you're going through this now. But at the same time, and I'm going to use a term here that I probably don't mean directly, but can you man up and face the emotional consequence or the consequence of anything that happens in your life? Lose your car, lose your job, lose your wife, lose your house, any of that stuff. Can you man up and face this emotional turmoil that may be created just to get some forward momentum and find out and get it off your chest and express yourself and stop being like that doormat I talked about? Yeah. And I think, just to wrap that up, I think what happens is that we are stuck in a state of mind, and we hold that state of mind going forward, thinking that's the way we should be. And when we realize that what we're facing doesn't usually happen, and I'm going to say 99% of the time what we fear is going to happen really doesn't, then once we start eliminating that, then our life starts to change. And that's what happened with me. As soon as I started realizing, and it was reinforcement over and over again, I'm going to test honoring myself in this moment and see what happens. And it gets reinforced, and you build self-confidence and self-esteem as you do it.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to someone who currently right now is struggling with that, and what you just said really resonated with them, and they would like to start moving forward today?
Yeah. I think the first step is to think about what you fear is going to happen. Okay, let's just say that I speak up to my boss. The first fear that might come into your mind is my boss fires me. Oh, I don't want that to happen. This is where I would say, let's drill down into why you don't want that to happen. Well, I don't want that to happen because that's my weekly paycheck. Okay, so let's just say you lost your weekly paycheck. How is that a bad thing? I like to use the word like the questions, how is that a bad thing? They go, well, if I don't have any money, I can't pay for rent. I can't pay for food. All right, so you can't pay for rent and food. How is that a bad thing? And then at this point, people are like, that's ridiculous. But we don't explore this deep enough. Okay, so how is not paying for rent and food a bad thing? All right, if you want me to explore it, I need a place to live. Okay, so what if you don't have a place to live? How is that a bad thing? And now, what you're doing is breaking through your model of reality and into some more primal concerns, more primal fears that you might have. And once you start like unraveling your grip or your thought process around the importance of things in your life, and it breaks it down, well, if I don't have a house, I'll be living on the street. All right. How is that a bad thing? And you start exploring this deeper issue in your life, because speaking up for yourself in the example of work, and your boss fires you, you automatically apply to great, no work, no food, I need another job. But really where the fear comes from is usually a deeper place, something like I said, more primal. So it comes down to almost survival in a way. So every time I honor myself, it feels like I won't survive. So there's a deep connection through, all these emotional layers of why we do these things. But once you break that down, okay, let's just say that I am on the street. How is that a bad thing? Well, if I'm on the street, then I'll need to go, I might starve, or I have to go to a homeless shelter, or things that we don't want to face. Like, I don't want to face this stuff. So I don't even want to look at it. But let's just say that you did. How is that a bad thing? Well, if I starve, I'll die. How about that?
Wow. We just went from standing up for yourself at work to dying and being homeless. That escalated quickly. But I think it's an interesting point to bring up, which is the primal fear, which is, hey, if I say something and the boss doesn't like it and now he thinks bad of me, I don't get the promotion, which is a form of survival because it's more income, more fuel for yourself and potentially family. I think even too with women, let's say if you speak up for yourself in a relationship and it doesn't turn out the way you want and you might lose her, that's a primal thing too, to lose someone that you love, to lose someone that you could potentially have a child with, which is primal. I think that's an interesting point. I don't think I've heard someone connect the nice guy, like the fear of standing up for oneself, to a primal desire. I think that's an interesting point. But what do we do with that? How does that help someone? Now people are scared. It's like, oh, I'm not going to speak up for myself.
Well, you know what it is? Once you get down to that point of, geez, I could die. I mean, I know it's a weird thought process, but it keeps drilling down into that primal feel, that primal concern of what might happen to you, even though you're not thinking about that in the moment. In the moment, you're thinking, oh, now what am I going to do for a job? But where does that come from? What's the origin of this? Oh, it is likely, from what I've worked with clients, what I find is that it's such a deep desire for existence, for survival, getting through life. So what do I do with that? These are the levels of acceptance that you go through in your life. Can I accept the fact that I just got fired? I mean, most people will hate it, but they said yes. They can say yes, I'll accept it because I know I can get another job, or even if I can't, I know I can go on unemployment. There's other parallel paths or whatever that you can get some other money, or non-parallel paths. And so, okay, can I accept that I won't be able to make my rent or my mortgage? No, but if the worst case scenario happened and I couldn't pay it, maybe there's a level of acceptance. Can I accept that I'm on the street? Can I accept that I'm hungry or, starving? And they might say, no way. But where things start shifting inside of you is when you say, I am willing to accept that if that happens, that could be the result. Now, it doesn't mean that that's what you should do. It doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. It's a mind shift where you get to a point where you go, if I can accept being homeless and really take that in and figure out where you are with that, if I can come to that level of acceptance, then when I'm in the real world, in that one moment where I need to speak up to my boss, if I have that acceptance inside of me, then I'm able to honor myself in that moment.
Wow.
It's very deep and it can be very powerful. But like I said, I've tested that. I've been homeless. I've been there, not because I was honoring myself, I got homeless typically because I wasn't honoring myself, because I was doing things that other people wanted me to do. And this shift in my mind and the way I present myself to the world today is totally different than what I used to, because now I have levels of acceptance that bring me to a different place inside me today. And it takes away anxiety and it takes away stress, because if I can tell you, no, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And they go, what? Or they say, wow, okay, you're a man of your word. Okay, fine. I'll give the project to someone else, or whatever the situation is. So I think does that answer that question?
I think it builds on it. And equally, I think the same thing goes to, can you accept being single if you're going to stand up or say something in a relationship? Can you accept that, hey, you could be single, and can you really own that? Because I feel like if you're not afraid to lose, if you're not afraid to fail, like you are more free from the outcome of the situation, whatever it may be, then I feel like you have more power.
Yeah.
You're standing up for what's important. You're honoring yourself. You're standing up for you, and that's what's important to you. And I feel if you're not afraid to lose, you're holding your power.
Yes.
You're putting it all on the line right now, and you're not afraid. That's a very courageous thing to do.
Yes, and I love what you just said. And one of the key words in that was freedom. And freedom from what? Freedom from attachments. I am attached to being in a relationship with this particular person. Yes, I know the feeling and I want it. Like when I was married, I wanted to stay with her for the rest of my life. But when she asked for the divorce, I was like, no. And I suffered and I felt the pain. But it came to a point where I go, does my happiness, does my self-worth, does any of that, is that redefined by the marriage? Or do I need to define that in myself and then bring that into any relationship I'm in? And the focus becomes more inward, and less attached to these external circumstances, to these people outside of you.
Yeah, I think this is a very powerful conversation. Now, what I'm wondering is, how do we not go overboard with this, where it starts to come off as being selfish, where you're not, whether it's a job, you're just like, I'm not going to take that project. I don't, or in a relationship, you're like, I'm not going to drive. I'm not going to, you're like, because it's something that you genuinely don't want to do. But, if at work, you got to be a part of the team, and in a relationship, you need to, it's a relationship. You need to be a part of the team as well. So where do we draw that line with getting your needs met and, oh, you're going a little too far here, it's coming off a little very selfish? Is this whole relationship about you now?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because what'll happen is that as you start honoring yourself and fulfilling your own needs, if you've been on the pendulum swing on the other side for a long time, people-pleasing, rescuing, non-confrontational, if you've been on that side for a long time, you may go to the extreme other end for a while so that you can balance it out. And I've seen this. I've done it a little bit where, for example, I am overly compassionate to people, and I'm going to give and give and give, because if they see that I'm a nice guy, they'll like me. And that just drove my behavior for a long time. But what I decided to do is come up with some adamant, no, I'm not going to do it. And that was the pendulum swing on the other side. You don't have to do it that way, but sometimes it's helpful to know, to start building the confidence in yourself that you can do it. And you can put your one toe in the water for sure and go, I'm going to honor myself a little bit more here. I highly recommend for anyone that's afraid to take these big leaps of faith, like sometimes I do, to put your toe in the water and go, I'm going to say no, but thanks for asking. If you're wanting to say no to something, or you take a bigger step and go, no. And then the pendulum swing. So I don't know if that makes sense, but the pendulum swing is where you are with all of this stuff. If you go to the extreme opposite end and you're filling your ego and you're filling all your needs, and other people are suffering because of it, and you're losing quality relationships or jobs because of it, as you finally understand that you can do this stuff, that pendulum swing goes back to center balance. And now you're able to go, well, I know what happens when I'm too extreme here. I know what happens when I'm too extreme there. It's like we don't want to test. A lot of people don't want to test how far that pendulum swing will go. So you never know your limits or your unlimitedness, I guess, you never know how far you can take something. So you never test the waters that far. So and like I said, it could go either way. You could test the water toe by toe as you walk in, or take these big leaps of faith. I like to experiment both ways and find out just how far I can take this stuff and be a little bit excessive, and sometimes to the point where you might lose things in your life, but that's extreme. But once you do that, you realize how much you're capable of doing and capable of honoring yourself. And then as that pendulum swing comes back to the balance, you're good again. And just on top of that, there's also a level of ego building in here. And, I heard a lot of people say that ego building is not good, but I honestly believe that when you build your ego in a healthy way, that it will encourage you to honor yourself more, because ego is all about, me, where compassion is all about you. I want to be compassionate to you. And what I end up doing as a people pleaser is being overly compassionate to you and under compassionate to me, actually disintegrating my ego and actually diminishing who I am, who I, quote, I am. So I focus on you so much, on other people, that I start losing a part of myself. And that's when that resentment builds. So I think it's important to also build your ego in a healthy way. And just a really quick 5-second story on that. When I was in high school, I had low ego, low self-confidence, low self-esteem. And one day I got a muscle car. And I tell you what, the looks I got, the compliments I got, the comments I got, people coming up to me, I just felt so proud. And this ego just started building and building and building. I was like, wow, this feels pretty damn good. I've never felt this good. And all because I'm kind of showing off in a muscle car. And then eventually I got rid of that muscle car and I got some junky 4-door Toyota. And my ego received such a healthy boost that when that pendulum swing came back in the middle for the ego, that I had enough of it in both layers, or all extremes, I should say, where I was healthy, confident, and had the self-esteem that I could go forward with a healthy ego and not so much like an over-egoized person, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I'm putting it together. So when you start standing up for yourself, it may go over. You're calling it the pendulum. And with time and actually feeling this power, you can start to come back, but you'll know that you can stand up for yourself when the situation is right, when you do need to, that you can do it. And I think that right there is what we want, is to know that you can, but you might not. You might look at the situation and decide, you know what, I'm going to take this project, or you know what, I'm going to do this extra thing in my relationship. But I think the problem is when you don't want to do it and you can't stand up for yourself and you know it and you continue living like that. I think that is the dangerous place. And then occasionally you might explode and let it out, you know, in the wrong fashion. It could be at work where you explode on a coworker or a customer or a client, a boss, whatever. In a relationship, I think it's very clear you can just explode over something super simple, like not cleaning up the dishes or something very dumb, but it's really about not standing up for yourself for the last several months or years.
Spot on. I mean, that's my definition of suffering, is when you're holding on to all this negative energy because you haven't honored yourself at a point in the past or even now. And like my girlfriend, sometimes, I mean, she's gotten better, but sometimes she I got to say that. And
she could be listening.
That's right.
Do you have female listeners here? So
good. That's good. So what she'll do is she'll process something. I'll say something or do something that I don't know upset her. And then she'll be like, And then she'll process it for 1 day, and then 3 days, then 2 weeks. And I'll finally go, what is wrong? You've been emotionally disconnected. You'll barely look at me. What's going on with you? And then she'll go, well, that day you said this. And I'm like, that's what this is about. If you had just said it as you were thinking it or as it was happening. And she goes, I needed time to process. And I'm thinking, well, take an hour or two. Don't take 2 weeks, because what you're doing is disintegrating our relationship. I didn't say it in these terms, but I'm thinking it in myself. She's disintegrating our communication and our breakdown. And I'm thinking, well, do I want to be with someone who doesn't want to show me love or connect with me emotionally? I'm thinking maybe I should pack my bags, not realizing that it's not just her personality. She was actually processing something. So holding on to that and being in a constant state of, oh, I'm still angry about it. I'm still angry about it.
Yeah.
That to me is like suffering.
Yeah. And it could be like an unconscious suffering. You may not even realize you're suffering, but it's on your mind. It's taking up your time. You have heated, your blood is moving. You might not be aware that is the source, and that's where the problems can come. Yeah, this has been very good. And so I think for a challenge for some guys is to, I want to say today, this week, when you feel like you need to stand up for yourself or you need to say something to get your needs met, I think we both here, Paul and I, want to encourage you to say something.
Yeah. I think where our mind goes when we're about to honor ourselves, when as a guy, I look at a situation and I go, wow, this just happened. I have an opportunity to use the tools I know I have inside of me, honoring myself, staying in alignment with what I value in myself, staying in alignment with my integrity. What do I want for myself? I almost look at myself as a separate person, as my own best friend, or I'm my own dad. I'm like, son, I want you to stand up for yourself. So I step outside myself and I go, what would you do if you were going to stand up for yourself? I think that's a good question. What would I do in this moment if I was going to stand up for myself and honor my integrity, honor myself, honor my values? And the answer will come. Now, doing the behavior that is in alignment with that answer is the challenge typically. And another quick story, after my divorce, I stayed with my mom in New Hampshire for a while. And she had been getting a divorce from my stepfather, an abusive, very nasty alcoholic, drank every night to pass out. He was kind of very toxic. And she finally got him out of her life after 40 years. She took a lot. But he shows up at the door while I'm there. And this is after several months. They haven't seen each other. And now I'm face to face with my stepfather, who I've never stood up to, have always had a level of fear and somewhat respect for him, in the sense that I'll respect him by avoiding him and not getting hurt. For the first time, he's knocking at my mom's door, and I have the opportunity to honor myself and honor my mom and say, no, you can't come in. But this fearful little child kicked in me and was like, oh, crap. This is the opportunity that I really need to stand up. And what does that mean? What's going to happen? And all these fears of the consequences of what I want to do started kicking in. And I reversed myself, rewound myself, said, no, come back. If I were to honor myself right now, what would I do? And I stuck with that. And I said, I'm sorry, you can't come in. She doesn't want to see you. You're not allowed here. And it was the first time I ever stood up to him. And I did. I felt like a 13-year-old child facing his dad and saying this stuff, because that's what happens. This childhood stuff comes up. And this is funny because I kind of sort of closed my eyes, maybe mentally. I don't think I physically did it, and waited for the punch. I just waited for him to punch me. And I was like, I'm just going to take it. If this is what it's going to be, then I'm just going to have to, again, using this term, I don't necessarily like it, man up and take it. He just shrugged his shoulders and said, okay, and then walked away. And I was like, oh my God, and I'm like, oh, I got through this moment. But again, reinforcement that the fear that I had, that what I thought was going to happen didn't happen. He walked away. I shut the door, and I was like, wow, there you go. There's another reference for me to continue honoring myself. We have these tools inside of us. It's just a matter of choosing to use them or not.
I think for many men, this simple yet extremely powerful tool could perhaps change a man's life and give him his power back. Maybe he lost it in high school, in college, after a breakup, after maybe 20 years of the same job that you haven't liked, kind of beat that out of you, or a really bad relationship could easily damage that power. And these little things, very subtle, can really help you get your power back and can really change your life. The whole nice guy thing, a lot of people think of it as this extreme thing where it's like, oh, I'm not a nice guy. No, I'm not one of those guys. But it's very subtle. It's little moments that you don't stand up for yourself. Little moments where someone says something and you felt something, but you didn't say anything. And those add up. Those really add up. So I think this has been very good. Paul, let's dive into the knowledge round. I'm just going to ask you a few more rapid fire questions here.
Okay, great.
Have you ever felt like you weren't the strong, grounded man that you know you're capable of becoming? Like there's something more inside of you, but you don't know how to get it out. Me too. Years ago, I was broke, sleeping on my brother's couch, and just got out of a serious breakup that left me on the floor for months. Now, I have a multiple six-figure business. I'm in the best shape of my life, have an abundant dating life, and live on the beach here in San Diego. I want you to break through too and create the life that you want. And because people kept asking me so many questions, I've created this free video training series on becoming a strong, grounded man so that you can have more freedom, love, and connection in your life. I'll also teach you how to build real backbone to boost your masculinity as a man so that you can have more respect, power, and confidence personally and professionally. Simply go to kfmconfidence.com to get this training. Again, that's kfmconfidence.com. Also, I share the #1 conversation that your father never had with you about women. That will be a major wake-up call for 90% of you and will improve the quality of your relationships forever. Go to kfmconfidence.com to get this free training today. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. All right, first question I have for you, more on the lines about purpose. What advice would you give to someone who's feeling really lost and they're unsure and they're in that indecision on that road, really not sure about their purpose in life?
That's a powerful question, and it's a deep look into yourself. Like, what am I doing here? What's my why? What's my purpose? What's the meaning of life? I think we've all faced this at one time or another. One of the most powerful processes I've done, I still revisit to this day just in case some doubt or indecision, or no, not indecision, but unclear, just lack of clarity comes up, is looking at the areas of your life, business, relationships, and health, and personal growth, and wellness, and all this stuff, and figuring out what's most important. Well, first of all, which area of your life is suffering the most? All right, let's just say it's my relationships. I keep attracting the wrong people in my life. All right, so now we have relationships. What's most important to me about relationships? This is a typical values exercise that you'll find in a lot of places, but what's most important to me about a relationship? And I might have values in relationship that says, well, I don't want her to smoke. I don't want to be a drug addict. I do want her to be emotionally connected. I want someone who likes sci-fi movies, all these different values. And you write all these values down, and then you put them in a hierarchy. Like, what's most important out of all these values? And one of them might come up that says, I want someone who's honest. That's an important value. I want someone who's faithful. That's an important value. I want someone that I can talk to without playing head games. All these values come up, and then you just order them in importance. And then when you have your final order, you follow it and don't settle for less. Like, you take the top 3 or the top 5 values, and you don't stray off of it, because as soon as we stray off what's most important to us, that's when we start sabotaging ourselves. That's when we start sabotaging our path. And so I looked at my relationship values and said, you know what? I'm not going to settle for anything less than this, which means I might be single for a while, because something like this is very specific, and I'm not going to settle. And what happens is you become crystal clear. You focus like a laser on what you want. And when the person arrives and she or he, whatever your preference is what you want, then you'll know it, because that's what your focus has been. I think that's important, is just to be in alignment with the values in the areas of life that are most important to you.
Yeah. Building on that, I recently read a study from Psychology Today where basically the psychologist said it's worth it to be single for a long period of time. Is it 10, 15, 20 years? The studies show that it's worth it to be single for if that's how long it takes for you to find the person that you really want to be with, because you're going to spend the next 40 years with that person. If you had a full, long, healthy life, that it would absolutely be worth it, versus someone who stayed in a relationship that was mediocre or less. Just comparing happiness levels, they found that it was absolutely worth it to just wait and be single and work on that single life in the hopes that you would find someone that would be worth it in the long run. And it was on Psychology Today. I thought it was a really interesting article because, I don't think we think about it like that.
It's almost scary to think that way, though.
It is
like
very
single.
Yeah,
for 10 years.
It said 10 to 20 years. It was like,
Wow.
if someone waited that long, they found that it was actually worth it in the long run of your entire life, of finding a partner that you would spend the next 40 to 50 years with and being happy with that person rather than settling. It's a lot of why we don't is the social pressure of, social media, family, friends, and we feel like if we're not with someone, then there's something wrong with us.
Yeah, and there's some validity to that. I would agree with some of it, like being alone allows you to work on yourself and bring the best version of you, the happiest version of you into a relationship. And if the other person does that as well, then you have a strong, long-lasting bond. But I also think that when you're in other relationships, that they are a good mirror for you to tell you what you need to work on. So I love having the feedback system. It doesn't mean you should get into a relationship, but at least when you get into it, approach it carefully and approach it slowly and go, oh, I'm being triggered by something she's doing. It's not her, it's me. I'm having this trigger. And then you can work on that in yourself. So I love the idea of working on yourself, but staying single for 10, 20 years. I don't know if I could do it.
I'm not suggesting, but I think it's an interesting article and point to make. And if you really look at relationships from a long-term perspective, rather than what am I getting today in this year or, in the next couple of years, I felt that it was an interesting article. Next question for you here, Paul. What do you think is really holding most men back from becoming stronger, grounded men?
Wow. I mean, this whole episode, we just talked about this.
I know. I think that is a big point. But anything else, or if you want to elaborate?
Yeah, I'll just elaborate on basically, I think especially when we were talking about people pleasing and things like that today, being the nice guy, a lot of that has to do with fears inside of us, emotional. I don't want to feel this. Maybe because when I chose to express my emotions when I was younger, my mom put me down for it. Or my dad said, you shouldn't cry. And then I felt like I need to block those off. Or whatever. We have all these dysfunctional behaviors that we develop when we're kids and we bring them to the adult world. And then we think it still applies, but it doesn't. So what we do is bring in these fears that we developed as a kid. Or like you said, maybe you had some crazy relationship that ended and it really messed with your mind and you lost your power. But the fear of facing this emotional pain inside of us, that's kind of where I focus on what I do, is that there's emotional pain inside of us if we're typically a people pleaser. We're a people pleaser or a nice guy because we want people to think good, well of us. We want them to think highly of us. So we are overly nice to them or just nice in general. But if it's at the deficit of our own happiness, if we're putting ourselves in some sort of emotional deficit or debt while we're pleasing others, then we're doing it wrong. So I think it's important to ask ourselves, is this something that is going to cause me deficit? Is what I'm about to say or do going to make me, drain me of some sort of good emotional energy of some sort? And if the answer is yes, then I probably shouldn't do it, or at least do a lighter version of it or come to a compromise, but not at the full expense of my own happiness.
Yeah, very good. And now your book here is The Overwhelmed Brain, Personal Growth for Critical Thinkers. So I want to shed light on that. But what have been 3 of your most influential books that have helped you on your journey?
Yeah, so there's the personal growth journey in myself, and there's also the experiential journey of learning so that I know enough to help others. So the personal and these kind of flip back and forth in between those two spectrums. But one of the books that really helped me understand myself was, interestingly enough, The Manipulative Man by Dr. Dorothy McCoy. That highlighted exactly what I was doing wrong in my relationship. I was reading through the pages going, oh crap, I'm like 3 levels of manipulation here. I'm doing all these things. And that was like eye-opening. I didn't realize how manipulative I've been. I just thought I was the nice guy and everything was great. Nope, I learned a lot about myself then. Another one is probably Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. Anything that he does, he talks about present moment. He talks about being in the now. And that really was enlightening too. As far as just being aware of what's going on inside and outside of you, but just being, I don't know if the word's focused, but just being in an observation mode. Like I can look at a tree as if I've never seen it before and go, wow, look at this tree. It's an unusual example, but it takes you out of your own mind and helps you be curious in the world. So that was a pretty powerful book for me. And then as far as like the experiential learning about what can I do with what I've learned and healed in myself, and how can I help others with it too? One of the books that helped me along the way, there's a ton of them. There's probably hundreds of books that helped me along the way. But one of them I remember is by Sidney Rosen. It's called My Voice Will Go With You. And it's about this psychiatrist named Milton Erickson. He brought hypnosis into the medical field. I mean, he's the one who finally got it accepted. But he changed lives just by telling stories through metaphor. And some of the examples in that book are really eye-opening. I mean, they tell you about meeting people in their model of the world. Like if you meet someone who goes, there's bugs all over me, there's bugs all over me. That's extreme. But if they say that and you don't see any bugs, you don't go, you're being ridiculous. I mean, you're not meeting them where they are. But to meet someone where they are, you go, oh my God, you're right. Let me get some spray. And you go, shh. You just pretend you're spraying it, and it might help them. It really changed my paradigm of thinking and how to meet people where they are. So I like those 3 books.
3 powerful books. I'll be adding those to the list here. And so the next one now is more of a scenario, Paul. Imagine you had 60 seconds to sit with your 25-year-old self. If you can envision where he's at personally, professionally, financially, relationships, and knowing what you now know today, what would you tell him to do and what would you tell him not to do?
Oh, geez, 25.
Yeah.
Oh my God, because I remember 25 going, why don't you just ask her out? Why don't you? Or if I was going back in time, I'd be like, Google is this big company. You should invest in a lot of stock. So those are the first things that come to mind. But, I'll expand upon that. Maybe I can get something out of this. I would probably, a lot of the stuff that we talked about today is just tell me, stop letting people use you as a doormat. I mean, you're being walked on. And I know my 25-year-old's like, yeah, but I just want to keep the peace. I don't want to cause any trouble. I was like, you have no idea what you're doing to yourself. You are dishonoring yourself. What I like to look at it this way. When you let people walk on you, it's like honoring other people dishonoring you. And I really think that's important. If you think of how can I let this person dishonor me like this, then I start to shift inside my mind and go, I don't want people to walk on me like a doormat. I can still be nice. All these tools and skills and qualities that I learned growing up, even though a lot of them may be dysfunctional or not helpful, they can still be utilized, but in a more controlled way. I can still be a nice guy, but I can still honor myself at the same time. Yeah, thanks for asking, and I'll help you with this, but I'm not going to help you with that. That's a basic example, but that's basically where I would go. I would say, you know what, Paul, if you want to say no, say it nicely.
Yeah.
Or not, but at least say no when you mean it. That's where I go.
Powerful. Really good. And
Right.
Say no nicely, respectfully, show empathy. I think we often think that if you say no, it's bad for the other person. It's mean to the other person. But there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it with empathy, with respect, to where it comes across as, hey, I'm just getting my needs met. Hey, I'm just standing up for myself here.
Yeah.
Very good. And Paul, any last partying words for the audience here before in the knowledge round? And then I want to ask you a few more things.
Sure. I was thinking when you were just talking about saying no and things like that, we think it's going to make our life worse somehow. I remember I was in a company meeting. It was a different company, different meeting. And there was like 20 of us gathered around, all the employees. And the boss was looking at each employee and was really angry. And he's like, what are you doing to make more sales for this company? What are you doing? And he was just like really painting us all in a corner. And all these thoughts are going through my head. What am I going to say when he calls on me? What am I doing? I know what I'm like doing task wise, but he was really pissing me off. I was like, man, this is my opportunity. This is one of those opportunities where I can honor myself and say what I mean. But I'm in this room full of people and he could just fire me on the spot. And he was really angry. And he looked at me and he goes, what are you going to do to make more sales? Or what are you doing? Or whatever he said. And I was like, well, I'm doing this and this and this and this. And he goes, well, why are you going to do that? He was looking for some more reasons behind it. And I said, well, so you'll stop yelling at us. And the room got silent. But it was a little passive aggressive. I said what I felt like saying. It's just like, you know what? I'm going to take the chance and see what happens. And then he goes, oh, really? You think I'm angry? And then he moved on to someone else. And I was like, wow. He didn't fire me on the spot. Nothing happened. But later on that day, I had so many people come up to me and say, wow, what you said, thank you so much. That's exactly what I was thinking. And I got all this admiration and respect. I mean, I wasn't looking for that, but I just felt like, I don't know, I just felt like I stood up for everyone, even though that wasn't my goal. But all these people had the same thing in mind, but somebody finally stood up and said it. I was told later by my supervisor, you probably shouldn't have said that. And I'm like, well, yeah, probably, but I did. And I wasn't fired, and I just got more respect at work. So that's what I'm saying, is that usually what we think is going to happen doesn't. It can, but can you get to that place of accepting that if it does, at least you stood up for yourself and you were in alignment with what was really happening inside of you?
I think that summarizes the whole episode here, just in that last story and statement about really hammering in that message, because I believe it's a very powerful message. And now, what's exciting you in the new year? What are you looking forward to? What's getting you out of bed in the morning?
What's exciting me in the new year? That is a good question. I've got my book launched, The Overwhelmed Brain. This was something that pretty much was forced to write, but I needed that. I needed somebody to kick me in the butt and take everything I know and talk about it in a book. So that's exciting me. I'll be creating a course. I mean, everything that I talk about in my book and my podcast and all that stuff, I have to consistently practice as well. So it excites me knowing that there's more, even though it's kind of weird to say this, more experimentation coming up for me, more challenges coming up for me, even though most of the challenges in my life I've surpassed them, but I still want more. I still want healing. I know there's still emotional triggers in me. Like, I'm not impeccable, infallible. So I know that when those come up, there'll be an opportunity to deal with those. But certainly, I'm looking forward to a profitable, happier, healthier, better new year in all ways.
All right. Sounds good. Aren't we all, Paul? It's been great having you here on the show. And for the audience, theoverwhelmedbrain.com. And you can also go to Amazon and type in The Overwhelmed Brain, Personal Growth for Critical Thinkers, or you can just put in his author, Paul Colaianni, and that's Colaianni.
That's right.
Paul, it's been a pleasure having you here on the show and sharing your story and unique message here with my audience.
Oh, it was awesome. Thank you. And it was great having this conversation with you.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes, because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of KnowledgeForMen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.